Hello, you absolute legends. This is it. This is the end of an era. This is hopefully the last video I make concerning my lawsuit or even Billy Mitchell. When I made my previous video regarding the result of the lawsuit, I was still actively looking into appealing the decision, which meant going back into court was a real possibility. And for that reason, unfortunately, I couldn't really say everything I wanted to say. And I also couldn't take as much accountability as I really wanted to because it may have hurt my case. But ultimately, I did not end up appealing the decision, so everything is now final and I am able to comment freely. In the last 2 months, a lot has been going on behind the scenes as a result of the decision, and in this video, I'm going to tell you everything. Regardless of whether or not you care about the lawsuit or Billy Mitchell, there are important questions that I think supporters of me or this channel deserve to know. For example, does any of the money this channel earns go to Billy? Exactly how much money do I owe Billy? How much money will Billy actually get? Will Billy's win inspire even more lawsuits? These questions will be answered, and many more. There have been hundreds of videos made about me in the past few months, and thousands upon thousands of comments. Yet I haven't seen or heard a single person talk about what is really going on accurately, which is totally understandable, because this is a very complex situation, and it is frankly impossible for anyone to know what is happening because you would need to be an expert in Australian law, you would need to know my exact financial position and what I own and how I run my business, and you would also need to be an expert on Australian bankruptcy law. Basically, you would need to be my lawyer, and I'm pretty sure most of you out there aren't. That's not your fault, but rather than having 100 videos speculating or even proclaiming things as fact that couldn't be further from the truth, I'm just going to lay everything out there. I know a lot of people are curious about what is happening, and I am more than happy to provide you with everything you would like to know, especially given that many people aren't happy with how I wasn't clear enough during the lawsuit. So now everyone will know everything, and then I am happy to move on forever. For the past 4 years, I have been in denial. Billy's lawsuit against me alleged that I accused Billy of being a major contributing factor in Apollo Legend's decision to take his own life. And I have always denied that, both in my legal defense and publicly. I would pick apart the exact words that I used and argued that I never technically said that. And if anyone did come away from my statements with the impression that Billy was in some way responsible, then it was their fault for adding meaning to my words that weren't there. I didn't want to believe I implied what the lawsuit accused me of implying for 2 main reasons. Firstly, it would have been terrible for my defense if it were true and the thought of losing the lawsuit was something I couldn't bear to deal with. And secondly, it's a disgusting and terrible thing to imply. Regardless of whether or not I believed what I said to be true at the time, which I did, and even if the facts I presented were correct, which was that Apollo had to pay a large sum of money in his settlement which put him into debt, I still had no justification for making the connection between Billy and Apollo's suicide. Apollo never suggested it himself, and the evidence doesn't point to it. I held on to the belief that I did not make that claim all the way through the lawsuit, and even after the judge's verdict, which ruled that I did make that claim, I refused to accept it. I was fully intending on appealing, and referred my case to a much more experienced and much more expensive lawyer for his opinion, and I fully expected him to confirm my belief and tell me that the judge was wrong. But he didn't. He told me that I did imply that and it was defamatory. And in fact, he outright refused to appeal the decision even though I wanted to, because I simply had no case. Now that the lawsuit has been over for a couple of months and I no longer have a vested interest in being correct, it has allowed me to finally accept that in this instance, Billy wasn't lying and his lawsuit against me was not unjustified. I defamed Billy. My actions were unacceptable, and that's why he won. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean that Billy didn't also lie a lot, even in court, and it doesn't mean I actually caused him hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages like the judge asserted, and it doesn't mean I didn't also have a valid defense that I could have possibly won on. But just in principle, I was at fault. My actions were wrong, and to be quite honest, after the dust has settled, I now personally believe I should have lost the lawsuit. However, I still think the damages awarded were far too high. Hopefully this result can have a positive impact on the broader community by forcing people to think twice about making claims about things they aren't privy to or have very good evidence for. I can certainly tell you that for me personally, though it was a very expensive and tough lesson to learn, my channel and my investigative work improved dramatically after I got sued. And in the long run, it would have been a very worthwhile experience for me to have gone through. In saying that, I have allowed my feelings towards Billy negatively affect my judgment at every step of the way. I think Billy is a terrible person. I think he sues innocent people. I think he is a cheater and a compulsive liar. But that does not mean I can say and do whatever I want in response. Two wrongs don't make a right. Billy can lie all he wants, but I shouldn't let his actions affect my own moral compass. And once I realized I was wrong back in 2021, my retraction should have been far better. Again, at the time, I was in denial and I didn't want to believe my mistake was that severe, so I felt as though making a retraction at all was sufficient. And I really did want the video with the retraction in it to get a lot of views. But it really should have been its own video, and not placed at the end of a separate video. I don't think all retractions need to be in a separate video, but considering the severity of my mistake, which I now acknowledge, in hindsight, it really should have been its own video. Even the retraction itself wasn't very good either. I only apologized for making a factual error about the details of the settlement, and I just denied there were any further more serious implications. And I also took the opportunity to continue to criticize Billy while I was at it. In Billy's response video, he said that I was accusing him of murder, which is of course hyperbolic and ridiculous. So that also made me less inclined to make a proper retraction, which again is wrong. Billy is always going to say stupid shit. It shouldn't affect my own actions. I made a mistake, I wronged Billy, so I should have owned up to it completely and with integrity. I also completely mishandled the way I communicated to the public in regards to the lawsuit. Obviously, I was intentionally choosing not to disclose what the lawsuit was about. I even said this multiple times, so it wasn't exactly a secret. Normally, I'd give you a full breakdown of this kind of thing, but because this one involves me, I'm going to keep my cards a lot closer to my chest. What I will tell you is that I am being sued for defamation, and the amount of damages being sought is $450,000. I will definitely be giving you updates as we go, but I don't want to give out too many details or strategies before I use them in court. Billy Mitchell is referring to the YouTuber Apollo Legend, who tragically took his own life in December of 2020. I won't go into specifics about this particular point because it does relate to his ongoing lawsuit against me. I didn't want to talk about it because what I said was wrong and I was afraid to repeat it. However, if I didn't want to make it clear to everyone exactly what the lawsuit was about, I shouldn't have turned it into this giant public spectacle. The truth is, I did want as many people to know about the lawsuit as possible because I legitimately thought I had a good chance of winning. I was not willing to concede on any issues whatsoever or entertain the opposite viewpoint. To put it bluntly, I was deluded. It's very easy to see this now, after the fact. However, it would be very difficult for many people to understand what it is like to be a defendant in a lawsuit, let alone one that was this complex. Again, just because I made a mistake in what I said originally, that doesn't mean Billy automatically wins. Defamation cases aren't that simple. I don't blame myself for fighting as hard as I did or believing that I would win, because I think that is a pretty natural tendency for most people to have in my position. But I had way too much hubris. I took a huge gamble and it backfired. Now I look like an idiot. The situation was pretty crazy though, and is definitely not something you can prepare for psychologically or emotionally until it happens. The entire lawsuit was extremely stressful and I was trying to deal with it in the bravest way possible. Even though I thought I would win, that didn't make the ordeal any less stressful or tormenting, because you never know for sure what's going to happen. I never personally lied about what the lawsuit was about, but I was obviously negligent in some way, given how many people had the wrong impression. My most egregious error was showing news articles about the lawsuit and a news clip which were incorrectly reporting on the lawsuit. I thought it made for good content, and it was interesting to see what the news was saying, so that's why I wanted to show it. But I either shouldn't have shown what the news was saying at all, or I should have specifically clarified that it was incorrect if I did. said. And to be clear, I did not search out incorrect reporting to intentionally mislead people. Clearly, showing a clip and not correcting it is misleading, and I fully appreciate how wrong that is now, but at the time there was simply no correct reporting on the lawsuit whatsoever. Everyone was reporting on it wrong. I wanted to show what the news was saying, but every single news article or post about it was wrong. I wasn't trying to do something nefarious, it was just stupid and thoughtless, and I didn't give my audience enough consideration or respect to make sure they weren't confused. And for that, I am deeply sorry. Now, let's talk about money. The total amount of damages plus interest in the judgment of the lawsuit was $390,000. In this video, I'm going to be using Australian dollars, but whenever I mention a figure, I will also place the amount in US dollars in the top right of the screen to make things easier for those in the US. The judgment isn't all that I would need to pay, however. In Australian courts, in almost all circumstances, the loser must pay the winner a percentage of their legal fees. Finding out exactly how much I would have needed to pay could have also been a lengthy and expensive process, which would have involved even more court hearings and more legal fees. So to make things easy, my lawyers reached out to Billy's lawyers to confirm how much they spent and how much they would be willing to accept. According to Billy's lawyers, he incurred costs of $686,000, and he would agree to a payment of $600,000 without the need for any further hearings. And I accepted this proposal, which meant that my total debt to Billy was $990,000. However, I do not have $990,000. In fact, I have no money. My total legal fees were around the same as Billy's, and while the public and especially Notch were very generous to me, I still had to spend at least $150,000 of my own money to cover them, and despite what Billy seems to believe, I am not rich. Therefore, because I could not cover the judgment debt, I filed for voluntary bankruptcy on the 9th of May. The entity that administers the bankruptcy is called the trustee, and it's the job of the trustee to take possession of any assets or property they are legally allowed to possess and realize their value, which simply means they take what they are allowed to take and they sell it for money, which they can then give to creditors, with creditors being the people you owe money to. As part of the bankruptcy process, the trustee conducted a thorough investigation of my financial position. I had to give them all of my bank statements and company records going back over 4 years, which was well before I was even sued. The purpose of this investigation was to uncover any assets they can possess and ensure that I haven't done anything dodgy. For example, to make sure I didn't secretly sell or give some property to a family member to hide it, or something similar. If I did do that, they'd be able to reverse that transaction, and if I lied about it to try and hide it, that would be committing a crime. On the 6th of June, the trustee issued a full report to my creditors, including Billy, outlining their findings and outlining how they have conducted the bankruptcy so far. So in this part of the video, I will be including screenshots directly from their report to confirm the legitimacy of what I'm saying. My bankruptcy was a relatively simple one. Firstly, I don't have any cash. I was asked to provide statements for all of my bank accounts, which I did, but the trustee even did their own independent search with all major banks. And the small amount of cash I do have, I was allowed to keep for living expenses. And before I go on, some of you may be wondering how spouses are treated in bankruptcy. And in Australia, a spouse is not liable in any way, and anything my wife owns cannot be touched unless it is jointly owned between the two of us. Along with my wife, I own 2 properties. In 2015, we purchased a small townhouse valued at $350,000, and then after we started a family, we upgraded to a larger family home valued at $1.2 million. Of course, this doesn't mean we paid that amount of money to own these properties. For our townhouse, we put down a $60,000 deposit, and the rest was covered by a mortgage. By 2022, the value of the townhouse had gone up slightly, and thus we were able to remortgage the property and withdraw the extra equity to put a deposit down on our new house. And it was a 10% deposit. So while the house was worth $1.2 million, we only needed to raise just over $100,000 to buy it. As part of the bankruptcy investigation, a valuation was conducted on our properties. At the time I filed for bankruptcy, my townhouse had increased in value to $635,000, and my current house had risen in value to $1.35 $5 million, the total value of the two properties being almost $2 million. However, the total amount of the mortgages equals $1.4 million. Therefore, the actual equity that we own in both properties is just under $600,000. In the event that someone goes bankrupt and they jointly own a property, the trustee will first allow the co-owner who is not bankrupt to purchase the bankrupt share. If you go to the Australian government website, it states, where the co-owner is not bankrupt and the realization of the property will provide a return to the estate, the co-owner is to be invited in the first instance to make an offer to purchase the trustee's right, title, and interest. And the key wording here is in the first instance, which means before anything else, which is exactly what happened. As per the trustee's report, it states, on appointment, Miss Wong put forward a without prejudice offer to purchase the trustee's interest in the properties, whereby inter alia, Miss Wong would pay the bankrupt estate an amount totaling $224,000. Based on the following, we accepted Miss Wong's offer. On the information at hand, Miss Wong had credible and likely perspective of establishing at least a 50% interest in the properties, and Miss Wong's offer was made from externally sourced funding, which the trustees held no claim or vested interest in. The offer was quite a bit less than the real value of my equity, because for the trustee to sell the properties on the open market, it would cost a lot of money, and those costs come out of the money they would have received from the realization of the property. This isn't paid for by the bankrupt themselves. They would first have to get a court order to sell it, pay for an agent, pay for marketing, and many other costs, and they took all of this into consideration and accepted the offer. On 29 May 2025, Miss Wong and the trustees executed a deed of settlement and release. There will be no further recoveries from this source, and the report confirms they did receive this money. So as of right now, my wife owns both properties and they can no longer be touched, which is of course fantastic news. If my wife couldn't source the funds to buy out my share, the trustee would have forced us to sell the properties, which would have been terrible. This idea of the joint owner being allowed to buy out the bankrupt share is basic Australian bankruptcy law. But let's take a look at how this was presented on Reddit and YouTube. In my Discord, I was explaining that my wife will buy out my properties, and I had a very open conversation about it to a few people, and I thought nothing of it at the time. But the next thing I know, my comments about my wife buying out my property were posted to Reddit, saying that I was boasting about moving assets to my wife before declaring bankruptcy to avoid paying creditors, which of course is not what I said at all. And the comments were all claiming that I was bragging about committing fraud and that I'm a criminal. I'm surprised to learn how many Australian bankruptcy lawyers there are on r/YouTube drama. To be clear, the moment I went bankrupt, the trustee took possession of my share of the properties. My wife bought out my shares of the properties from the trustee. The money the trustee receives is then given to the people that I owe money to. On YouTube, things weren't any better. LUS is a channel that claims to be a lawyer, and just like Reddit, he was calling me a criminal because he doesn't understand basic Australian bankruptcy law.
Carl Jobs, on the other hand, we are going to talk. I saved the best statement for last, because in my opinion, if this is real, if he was sued, he lost, then he had his wife buy his equity in the home so he doesn't pay Billy Mitchell, and he's admitting so on Discord. We are crossing the line of criminal right now. We need to send these to the bankruptcy court. We need to send this video to the bankruptcy court. I need to get in touch with the bankruptcy court and let them know what's going on. Because if this is real, and this is not sarcasm, there are many things that Carl said that he could end up in jail. Forget owing a bunch of money. What Carl was doing, trying to hide assets, is actually criminal.
And he and his followers actually did report me to the Australian government. I know this because the bankruptcy trustee told me. But of course, nothing happened because I didn't do anything wrong, and everything that I explained can be found in 2 seconds on the Australian government website. I would like to give these people the benefit of the doubt though, and I don't think they were all acting in bad faith. When I covered The Completionist, I also recommended that people should report the charity to the relevant authorities. So I don't blame anyone for that, and it would be extremely hypocritical for me to chastise someone for reporting what they believe to be a crime. But of course, it does upset me to see so many people believe misinformation, whether intentional or not, and to then use that misinformation to form such a terrible opinion of me. At least when I made my videos on the completionist, they weren't just based on a few Discord messages. In my completionist videos, I contacted the charity to get further confirmation. I checked all of the tax documents. I even reached out proactively to some ordinary gamers to work with him to make sure that I wouldn't make any errors that I might have made if I did everything myself. The idea of just looking at a Discord message and thinking that says anything about reality is pretty ridiculous, and it's kind of shocking that people actually take these things seriously. The only other asset that the trustee took possession of is my share of the company that runs this YouTube channel. Most YouTubers of my size will create a company for their YouTube channel, so the money earned by this channel doesn't go to me directly. It goes to the company. So this answers the question of whether or not the money earned by this channel goes to Billy. No, it doesn't. Billy did not sue the company, nor does he have any ownership or interest in it. Billy can only take money from me as an individual, and only if I earn over a certain amount, which I will explain in a moment. The company was jointly owned by me and my wife, and as with my properties, with my wife being the co-owner, she was invited by the trustee to purchase my share. On the 24th of June, my wife made an offer to purchase my share for $2,000, and on the 6th of August, the trustee accepted her offer. So as of right now, my wife has total ownership of the company that owns this channel. So neither Billy nor the trustee has any claim over it or its earnings. And you might be wondering why she could buy my share so cheaply. It's because owning a share in a company doesn't really mean much if the company isn't making a profit. In order for a share to have any value to an owner, the company needs to make a profit so that it can pay a dividend. In the case of the company that runs this channel, it won't be making a profit for the foreseeable future. This is because all earnings will be redistributed through wages and expenses. Therefore, buying the share would be a complete waste of money to any potential buyer, as the owner would see zero returns. The company has 2 employees, me and my wife. It's been that way since the company's inception in 2020. And for that entire time, we have both received an equal wage. Instead of me just telling you what my wage was, I will read from the official report by the trustee, who again did a full investigation of my financial position over the past several years. The bankrupt has disclosed his interest in 1 ordinary share in Carl Jobs Gaming Proprietary Limited. Records filed with ASIC verify the bankrupt holds 50% of the company's shares on issue. The bankrupt is a former director of the company and is employed by it. The company operates, inter alia, the YouTube channel Carl Jobs, established on the bankrupt's personal image. As noted in section 4.7 above, the bankrupt has disclosed a reduction of income from $150,000 to $80,000 on his bankrupt form and advised this is attributable to the reduced cash flow of the company. Based on historical records, we initially deemed the bankrupt's estimated income pursuant to section 139Y of the Act to be $150,000, and as such may be liable for income contributions totaling $14,000 for the first year of his bankruptcy. The bankrupt has disputed this, and we are further assessing the information provided. Here, the trustee looked at the last several years of personal income from the company and assessed my predicted income to be $150,000 per year. This is important because in Australian bankruptcy, for every dollar you earn over $120,000 per year, at least in my case because I have 1 dependent, 50 cents will go to the trustee to be given to creditors. So they can't touch any of my earnings up to approximately $120,000, and then beyond that, 50% would need to go to the trustee. This $150,000 per year salary was based on previous years. However, as we all know, since the verdict, my channel has seen a large reduction in views. It seems at this moment I'm receiving about half the views I was before. Of course, I hope this improves and I will work hard to rebuild my channel, but that's where it stands as of right now. At these views, the company is not earning enough to pay 2 salaries of $150,000 $250,000 plus expenses, so our salaries will be reduced. Certainly, they will be reduced to a level below the threshold where I would need to begin paying the trustee any money. In a nutshell, all of the money that this channel earns will go to company expenses and wages for my wife and I. None of the money this channel earns will go to the trustee or Billy. Australian bankruptcy lasts for 3 years. After 3 years, all of my debts are discharged, which basically means they are permanently erased. And yes, this includes my debt to Billy, as civil judgments and cost orders are considered provable debts and are discharged through bankruptcy. Aside from my properties and my share in the company, I don't have any other recoverable assets. I own a car, but it's only worth $20,000 and is jointly owned with my wife, so I'm allowed to keep it. Realistically, unless something drastically changes, the only money the trustees will get from me will be from my wife buying my properties, which again was $224,000. So out of that money, how much will Billy get? Well, first, we need to consider trustee remuneration, which is how much money the trustee pays themselves. Administering a bankruptcy is very expensive, and the estimated cost for my trustee to perform all of their duties is $50,000. This $50,000 is not paid for by me. It comes out of the money they collect. So from that $224,000, $50,000 will be paid to the trustee. After this, we have to consider the fact that Billy is not the only person I owe money to. I had credit card debts and tax debt. These were normal debts that most people have, and they were debts that I was planning to pay at some point. But because Billy forced me into bankruptcy, all of my personal debts also fell into the bankruptcy, and they also became creditors. And these other creditors will take some of the money that the trustee receives as well. I don't know the exact figure, but I would guess that Billy will receive somewhere around $150,000. And given that Billy incurred legal fees of $686,000, it means that despite winning, Billy still lost over $500,000. Now, I don't know if Billy personally cares about losing that money, but in my opinion, this is valuable information for the public to know. Lawsuits are not a money-making exercise. In almost every case, unless you're suing a huge company or suing someone you know is very rich, the only people who make money are the lawyers. When Billy sued me back in 2021, my net worth was less than $100,000, and he sued me for $450,000. In Australia, you simply cannot get more than what someone has in a civil lawsuit. There was never ever any potential universe that ever could have existed where Billy didn't lose a lot of money. The outcome that eventuated was basically his best case scenario, and it was still very costly. With all of this said, I want to make it extremely clear that this outcome is not the result of me gaming the system. I did not want to go bankrupt, and I did what I could to avoid it. Before going bankrupt, I made an offer to Billy. I told him exactly what I owned, including the 2 properties and my share in the company. I told him what they were worth. I advised Billy that I could not pay the judgment, and thus I would be declaring bankruptcy. However, I first gave Billy the option to accept an immediate cash payment of $300,000 in order to release me from the judgment. Of course, that money wasn't coming from me, this was sourced from family members. This was a very generous offer. If Billy accepted this offer, he would have received double the amount of money he will receive now through the bankruptcy process, and on top of that, because I would be avoiding bankruptcy, all of my personal debts would still need to have been paid, which total over $100,000. However, Billy chose not to accept this offer. So instead of me paying Billy $300,000 and retaining all of my personal debts of over $100,000, I was forced into bankruptcy, where my wife bought my share of the properties for $224,000, of which Billy only gets $150,000, and all of my other personal debts are completely discharged in 3 years, along with my entire debt to Billy. Effectively, Billy rejecting my offer cost him $150,000 and saved my family $200,000, which just shows how good faith and generous my offer really was. On the topic of generous offers, I was the only party to ever make a formal settlement offer during the lawsuit. On the 23rd of May 2022, I offered to settle the lawsuit with the following terms. I pay Billy $3,000, I never repeat the statements he has a problem with, with, and we both walk away. Now, you might look at this offer and think that $3,000 is not a lot of money. But again, considering that Billy's best case scenario, if he kept suing me, was to lose $500,000, this offer was extremely generous. And if the lawsuit wasn't about money, what was it about? When Billy sued me, I had already removed that section of the video months prior. I had already made a retraction. If Billy wanted a better retraction or a better apology, he could have made his own settlement offer requesting it. I am certain that I would have gladly made a separate video with a better retraction and apology to prevent further litigation. But Billy never asked. The only thing Billy ever asked for was money, a thing that he was never, ever going to get. And now it does appear as though Billy is very unhappy with how things turned out. Initially, he seemed excited that I went bankrupt. He even went out of his way to let the public know that it happened. This surprised me. I assumed Billy would want to keep this a secret for as long as possible, because by its definition, the fact that I went bankrupt confirms I don't have the money to pay him. And I was under the impression he would want the world to continue to believe he had just made a ton of money. Billy even tweeted a picture of himself in front of a vacationer motorhome, claiming that the equity from my house will pay for it. He looks so happy here. A new vacationer costs $250,000 USD. That is around 2.5 times the amount of money he is getting from me. At least my equity will be able to cover the deposit. That's something, I guess. Personally, I don't think spending $700,000 suing me just to get $150,000 back was a smart way to get enough money to buy a new motorhome. But I truly hope Billy buys it, and I'm looking forward to seeing him drive it soon. I don't know if Billy tweeted this because he wants to fool the public into believing he didn't just lose $500,000, or if he genuinely believed he was going to get his money back. But I'm inclined to think it might actually be the second, because a few days later, Billy tweeted this. This tweet is fascinating for multiple reasons, and despite being only 2 sentences long, it tells us so much about how ignorant Billy is. Clearly, Billy is upset with how things are going. So upset that he wants to go crying back to the court. This tells me that Billy really does care about the money he thought he was going to get, though I'm not sure why he is so upset now. Things are going exactly as we told him things would go over 2 months ago when we told him I would be going bankrupt. Maybe Billy's lawyer didn't properly inform him of what bankruptcy means. Billy claims I've engaged in serious illegal activity before and during the bankruptcy process, and I'm very curious to know what he is referring to. Remember, people on Reddit and YouTube are claiming I was a criminal because my wife purchased my share of the house. So maybe Billy has been believing too many Reddit comments or watching too many LUS videos. In any case, it's evident from this tweet that Billy still hasn't even bothered to learn what bankruptcy entails, because the notion that he could take me back to court is a hilarious one. One of the main benefits of going bankrupt is that it protects you against further legal action from creditors. Billy cannot take me back to court, no matter how much he wants to, at least in relation to the current debt. He can sue me for something completely unrelated, but when it comes to any money I currently owe him, he can't do anything. There are certain situations where a creditor can sue a bankrupt person, but none of those apply here. Again, I don't know if Billy is just ignorant himself, or if he is just relying on the public being ignorant to buy into his antics. However, just to be sure, I emailed the trustee to confirm if I had done anything illegal. They responded confirming they have no idea what Billy is talking about, though they did contact Billy's lawyer to ask what he was referring to, because, as they say, they have a legal duty to investigate all alleged misconduct. Billy was apparently very upset by this, because several days later, he tweeted a cartoon depiction of himself hanging me to death from a tree. Apparently, I was complaining about his tweet. Aside from the fact I wasn't even complaining, I was merely double-checking if the trustee had any idea what Billy was rambling on about. I don't understand why Billy would be upset with the trustee wanting to investigate this supposed illegal activity. You would think Billy would be happy the trustee was reaching out so that Billy could inform them of all of the ways I was engaging in serious illegal activity. One possible reason that Billy was so enraged is because he knows that every time the trustee has to investigate some bogus report of illegal activity, they charge it to the bankrupt estate, which means Billy ends up getting less money. And they charge a lot. They already spent over $20,000 investigating my affairs for the first time. Does Billy want to spend another $20,000 doing it again? In any case, consider this. Billy won the lawsuit. He won, I lost. Since the verdict, there has been a huge smear campaign launched against me, with many people, including Billy, trying to do as much damage to my brand as possible, and it's been very effective. I even had to go bankrupt. But that's still not good enough for Billy. Despite all of this, he is still fantasizing about my death. This isn't the first time Billy has jerked off to the idea of a YouTuber's death either. Back in 2018, he had heard from his wife that Apollo legend had died. This was shortly after Apollo made his video exposing Billy's cheating, and Billy was overjoyed. So much so that he messaged his friends, saying that he would try his hardest not to smile or giggle, and even going further, saying that he hoped it was true. This is one of the reasons we felt as though Billy shouldn't win the lawsuit, because it doesn't make sense that Billy could express so much joy over the thought of Apollo's death and then have any ground to stand on when he actually died. During trial, Billy acted as if he was so remorseful and so regretful that he sent those messages.
If it's true, I will not shed a tear. I will try not to smile or giggle. No promises.
Correct, that's what it says.
And you maintain that that is you not believing he's actually dead.
I didn't believe he was dead for a second.
Why on earth would you say if it is true?
That was dark humor, and I regret it very much.
If it is true, the reference to if it is true is dark humor.
Yes, it's dark humor. I regret doing it. I guess I really regret doing it because it was true 3 years later.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't make a joke then.
Were you thinking about how his parents would feel if you were joking about his death back then?
No, because I didn't believe he had died. From an anonymous post on Reddit, I didn't believe it.
So you went and texted 2 people about it because you didn't believe it?
Correct. I just brought it to their attention.
But it wasn't true. Why would you bring it to their attention?
It was true that it was being spoken about on Reddit.
Where does that come out in the text messages? Can you just show me where in the text messages you say that?
On the next page.
Okay.
Go back to page 9. My wife found it online. Apollo Legend's dead, no joke. When you go down further, it says, he says, I'm looking on Reddit. And I said, the only place I remember she mentioned was reddit.com, which is a red flag for something not being true.
Does it say that?
If it said ABC News, I would have had a different attitude.
Oh, okay. Rightio.
But I shouldn't have made it comment anyway. It was dark humor and very inappropriately placed.
So then when he starts looking online for other verifications of the death, if you turn then to page 10, you say, I certainly hope you find something solid. Meaning, I hope that you find something on ABC, for example, confirming that he was actually dead.
No.
That's not what you mean by that.
No.
That's your evidence.
Should I read the whole text, or would you like to read it?
Then you say, oops.
Yeah.
Was I not supposed to say that?
Correct. Dark humor that I regret tremendously to this day.
Okay. And then you say that you're going to...
That's an indication. Oops. And I regret it. I don't know what to say. I regret it. I sincerely regret it. Especially because it became true 3 years later.
This entire act was all bullshit, however, because as soon as our trial ended, Billy went right back to his favorite pastime of masturbating to the thought of dead YouTubers who have made videos critical of him. Clearly, Apollo Legends' death didn't quite satisfy Billy's sick fetish, and it even appears as though Billy has upgraded, because now it wouldn't be enough for me to just kill myself like Apollo Legend. In Billy's depraved fantasy, he gets to be the one who holds the rope. Billy has got to be one of the dumbest people alive. When Billy sued me, I had basically nothing. My net worth was essentially zero. I had a tiny amount of equity in my townhouse, but I was also in debt and I had just started a family. Billy spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars suing someone who had no money and who had to crowdfund their defense. He rejected my attempts to settle. He made no attempt to settle or negotiate himself whatsoever. He rejected my offer to avoid bankruptcy, and now he is upset he lost all of his money. What a moron. And I think I know why Billy is especially upset. And it's because the truth is that Billy Mitchell is not a rich man. As part of my due diligence, I conducted a search of all of Billy's assets, just like Billy should have done before he sued me. This is so I knew what he owned in the event I won the lawsuit and he owed me money. And what I found interesting is that when I conducted a search on Billy's house, I found out that it wasn't in his name. It was completely in the name of his wife. Naturally, the first thought I had was that maybe Billy had moved this asset out of his name in preparation for losing the lawsuit. So I found the property deed of transfer, which showed in the year 2000 the property had been transferred solely into Billy's wife's name from a third party when she bought it. Except it wasn't bought by Billy's wife. Or at least, she wasn't his wife at the time. She didn't carry Billy's name, and the deed said she was a single woman. This didn't make sense to me, because Billy claims he has been married since 1996.
And you've been married for a long time. How many years have you been married?
Oh, since 96.
96. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I've already had 2 divorces, and that's marriage is a wonderful and difficult thing.
Well, you've achieved something I haven't achieved. Look at it that way.
All right.
And Billy would tell stories about how he's been married since the 90s.
I won't lie to you. It was 1999. My son was a year and a half old, and my daughter was 2 years old, or 2.5 years old, rather. And I had the opportunity to go to Japan. And I was so paranoid as I approached my wife to tell her about this opportunity. But she married this guy who's going to run off and play video games in Japan.
None of this was adding up, and I wanted to know what was going on. So I searched through public records, and they show that Billy wasn't married to his wife in 1996. Instead, they were married in 2003. So if Billy was married in 2003, why would he lie and say that he was married in 96? Well, it's because when he started having children with his current wife, he was married to another woman. Billy first got married in 1990. Then, in the mid-90s, he started a family with a woman who wasn't his wife. On the 13th of March 2003, Billy appeared in Season 4's 7th episode of the MTV series True Life, I'm a Gamer. In that episode, it shows Billy with his supposed wife, Evelyn. The interesting thing about this is that Evelyn wasn't his wife, as Billy was still married to someone else. However, I guess Billy figured that if he was going to publicly lie about who he was married to, he may as well make it official. So a week after this episode aired, Billy filed for divorce. And when his divorce was finalized in late September of 2003, the very next week, he applied to marry his mistress of many years. So that's why Billy lies about his marriage, because the truth is that he had his children out of wedlock to a mistress, and that just doesn't sound quite as wholesome.
I've already had 2 divorces, and that's marriage is a wonderful and difficult thing.
Well, you've achieved something I haven't achieved. Look at it that way.
All right.
But what about Billy's hot sauce company? Wasn't that a booming success? After Billy supposedly achieved the first perfect Pac-Man in 1999, he went on a press tour, where he gloated about being a hot sauce tycoon that was running a $5 million a year business. According to Billy, the hot sauce company was something he developed, and he still claims he invented the hot sauce to this very day. But this idea that Billy created the hot sauce, or the company that sells it, seems to be something he fabricated himself. Billy's hot sauce company was formed in 1988 by Billy's parents. And according to news articles at the time, the hot sauce was developed by Billy's mother, Barbara. And this was always the case up until 1999, when Billy decided to start taking credit for his mother's work. According to company filings, Billy didn't even take over running the company until 2003. And by this time, the company hadn't done business in 3 years. So if the company was doing $5 million a year in 1999, why did operations suddenly cease just a year later? And I suppose an even more pressing question is that if Billy really was a successful hot sauce tycoon running a multi-million-dollar a year business and a devoted family man, why is it that in the year 2000, the mother of his children needed to take out a $100,000 mortgage solely in her name just to buy their family home, the home that Billy lives in? And money was apparently so tight that in 2001, she filed for bankruptcy. Meanwhile, at the very same time, Billy was out there trying to publicly brag about how rich he was by offering $100,000 to anyone who could get past the Pac-Man split screen. So either Billy did have $100,000 and decided it was more important to him to give it to a random person who could beat a video game rather than buy a house for his family, or maybe, just maybe, Billy is a con artist who lies about his success just like everything else. But anyway, back to Billy's wife's house. In late August of 2021, Billy and his wife mortgaged his wife's home. This timing is interesting, because just a few weeks later, Billy would file his lawsuit against me. So it's rather curious that right before Billy knew he was about to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in a legal battle, he mortgaged his wife's house. This doesn't seem like the actions of a man with a lot of money. And when Billy was required to put up security during our lawsuit, guess where the money came from? Not from Billy, but from Billy's wife. Again, this doesn't seem like the actions of a man with a lot of money. This would explain why Billy is now so upset that he is fantasizing about killing me. As the adage goes, a happy wife means a happy life. And given that Billy appears to have lost so much of his wife's money, I can't imagine the hell he is going through right now. But let's look on the bright side. At least now me and Billy have something in common. In fact, I would even consider us kindred spirits. Billy and I share a special bond. We both live in houses entirely owned by our wives. Recently, Billy put out a video titled "A Statement from Billy Mitchell, Carl Jobst." In the video, Billy discusses various things. Of course, it's full of lies as per usual, but he spends a good amount of time discussing my Gofundme, and what he says in the video is very interesting. It's incredibly dishonest, but I'm actually glad he came out with this video because it gives me the perfect opportunity to let the public know details that have never been made public before.
By the time Mr. Jobs had lost his financial backing from Notch, Notch's money was exhausted, he had failed to dismiss the case, he needed money, and he needed money now. But he knew his viewers may not open wallets if he was transparent about the true subject of the lawsuit. Here's what he does. On November 4th, 2022, he reaches back 6 months to May of 2022, pulls out an old legal correspondent that never received follow-up, and he creates a GoFundMe campaign on the premise that he urgently needs financial support for a potential second lawsuit. Carl, I do not accept the fact that you generally woke up 6 months after the last correspondence and also after your financial support ran out from Notch, and you suddenly felt the need to crowdfund for a potential second lawsuit. You obviously knew the second lawsuit was not coming. Or at the very least, you were unsure if it ever was.
Billy seems to be claiming that I knew Billy was never going to file any further lawsuits after his original complaint, and that it was all just a scheme to raise money under false pretenses. The way Billy talks about things always seems to make sense upon first glance. That's what makes Billy such a great con artist. If you have no context or any knowledge on the topic he is discussing, it's easy to believe what he says. But when you break the things he says down piece by piece and examine them in greater detail, you will always find that he is completely full of shit. So let's go through Billy's statements and break them down piece by piece.
On May 10th, 2022, Mr. Jobs published a video about me that led my lawyers to send a concern notice to his lawyers. On May 22nd, 2022, Mr. Jobs and I were scheduled for mandatory mediation in the already existing lawsuit, one and only lawsuit. Before the mediation, my lawyers emailed his lawyers a copy of a legal complaint related to the concerns notice, and my lawyers said that I would proceed with the complaint unless the current lawsuit resolved at the mediation.
This is truly amazing. Billy is admitting that his lawyer sent me a second complaint for a new lawsuit and is admitting that his lawyer advised my lawyers that it would be filed if the existing lawsuit did not resolve, which obviously it did not. So far, this is true. But what's astonishing is that for the past 2 years, Billy has been saying that the second complaint never existed at all and I was lying about the entire thing. In July 2023, in a public rant, Billy said that I was lying about the second complaint and that there was only ever one complaint.
But then you go on there and you say he's suing me again. He puts up nothing, no proof, anything that he's being sued again. Nothing. There is one complaint in there, and that's the original complaint.
Now he finally admits there was indeed a second complaint that was sent to us, and we were advised that it would be filed if the first lawsuit didn't resolve. I am very happy that Billy is finally willing to admit this.
The current lawsuit did not resolve, but I chose not to begin a second lawsuit, even though my lawyers felt that the second claim was meritorious. No further developments occurred after May 22nd relating to that concerns notice and the complaint emailed to Mr. Jobs' lawyer. The complaint was not filed. The complaint was not served. My lawyers did not email Mr. Jobs' lawyers after the mediation to request that he accepted service of a second lawsuit. It was complete silence.
This is also true. After Billy's lawyer advised us he had instructions to file the second lawsuit, we didn't hear anything further. Billy apparently changed his mind at some point, though he didn't tell me or my legal team. Billy had his lawyer send us a second complaint and instructed his lawyer to tell us that he had instructions to file the second complaint and begin a second lawsuit, and then changed his mind but didn't tell us. That is effectively what Billy is saying.
And as I showed earlier, at this time, May 22nd, 2022, the funds that Mr. Notch gave to Mr. Jobs ran dry.
This is also true. Notch stopped funding my legal fees in early 2022.
In July of 2022, Mr. Jobs submitted an application to the court of what effectively amounted as a Hail Mary attempt to dismiss the lawsuit. That didn't pan out for him.
This is such a ridiculous lie that I'm shocked even Billy Mitchell would say something this stupid. But I guess all of these years later he can still impress me. Billy shows a document on screen and claims that I submitted an application attempting to dismiss the lawsuit. What he's showing on screen is an order from the judge. Let's take that same document and scroll it down slightly to see what it says. It says the plaintiff, aka Billy, will further provide security for the defendant's costs of the proceeding in the amount of $15,000. So what is Billy going on about? This has nothing to do with dismissing the case. In July 2022, we submitted an application to require Billy to put down more money as security in the event he loses the lawsuit. Billy is not an Australian citizen, and as such, recovery of any money would be more difficult. So we made the court require him to put up extra money as bond because he refused. And the judge agreed with us and forced him to pay an extra $15,000. What does this have to do with dismissing the lawsuit? It has nothing to do with dismissing the lawsuit. Billy just puts this random order on screen, cuts off the bottom right where it shows what the order is about, and claims I made an application to dismiss the lawsuit. It's just a huge lie.
By the time Mr. Jobs had lost his financial backing from Notch, Notch's money was exhausted, he had failed to dismiss the case, He needed money, and he needed money now. But he knew his viewers may not open wallets if he was transparent about the true subject of the lawsuit. Here's what he does. On November 4th, 2022, he reaches back 6 months to May of 2022, pulls out an old legal correspondent that never received follow-up, and he creates a GoFundMe campaign on the premise that he urgently needs financial support for a potential second lawsuit. Carl, I do not accept the fact that you generally woke up 6 months after the last correspondence and also after your financial support ran out from Notch, and you suddenly felt the need to crowdfund for a potential second lawsuit. You obviously knew the second lawsuit was not coming.
According to Billy, if you do not file a lawsuit within 6 months, it means you aren't going to file it ever. But let's take a look at Billy's history of lawsuits and when he does actually file them. In Florida, the statute of limitations is 2 years for filing a defamation lawsuit. Apollo Legend made his video in February 2018. Billy Mitchell sued him exactly 2 years later in February 2020. Jeremy Young exposed Billy's cheating by using MAME in February of 2018, and Billy sued him alongside Jeff Harris and Donkey Kong Forum exactly 2 years later in February 2020. Twin Galaxies banned Billy in April of 2018, and Billy sued them in Florida exactly 2 years later in April 2020. In California, the statute of limitations is only 1 year. So in California, Billy sued Twin Galaxies exactly 1 year later in April of 2019. In almost every single defamation lawsuit Billy has ever filed, it was right before the statute of limitations expired. In fact, the fastest lawsuit Billy ever filed was his original lawsuit against me, but even then, that was 4 months later, not immediately. The statute of limitations in my state is 1 year, and he has that entire year to file. This notion that if you don't file something immediately it means you aren't going to file it at all is just fucking stupid. But here is where you can tell Billy is truly evil. Billy just sits there and nonchalantly describes how he had his lawyer create a second complaint and then sent that to my lawyers and told us he would be suing us again as if it's no big deal. I mean, it's just a little second lawsuit. What's the big fuss about? I promise you, you cannot appreciate how stressful a lawsuit is until you are sued. I could try to convey it in words what it's like, but it would never do it justice. It's one of the worst things you could ever go through, and it lasts for years and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just ask anyone who's ever been sued. Now, what you really couldn't imagine is going through an existing lawsuit and then being told you're going to be sued again. And this wasn't just an idle threat. This was Billy's lawyer sending us the physical complaint and saying that he had instructions to file it. It was literally the most stressful thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. Billy sits there and doesn't even realize that by him explaining that he sent a second lawsuit and told us that it would be filed and then changed his mind at some point and decided not to tell me and my family is one of the most disgusting and pure evil things he has ever done. It was an outright abuse of the legal system, and it was done just to cause as much psychological damage as possible. Well, congratulations, it worked. I could not handle the ongoing stress of the impending second lawsuit, so I asked the public for help. I didn't ask immediately because I don't like asking for money, and I never wanted to. But the reality is that if Billy filed the second lawsuit, we would have been financially destroyed. There was no way we could afford 2 lawsuits. And the constant stress of having to deal with multiple lawsuits hanging above not just my head, but my wife's head as well, was too much, and I eventually created a GoFundMe to alleviate the stress.
You obviously knew the second lawsuit was not coming. Or at the very least, you were unsure if it ever was. You created a GoFundMe campaign with the knowledge and intent to fund the existing lawsuit on false premises. Period. End of paragraph.
Billy asserts he doesn't believe I ever thought it was ever coming. Well, apparently he was pretty convincing, because it wasn't just me who thought that, it was my lawyers as well. Now, do me a favor, and quickly read this Discord exchange. Do you think I'm telling the truth here, or joking? What about now? Do you think I'm being serious or joking around? If you can't tell and you see me say something dumb on Discord, assume I'm joking, because usually I am. There is a big difference between talking shit on Discord with friends and the real world. I always say stupid things on Discord. It's my way of having fun. But people, whether it be bad faith or not, always take it seriously. Is everything you say always 100% serious? Have you ever made a joke? Have you ever used sarcasm? Have you ever been facetious? Imagine if you weren't allowed to joke around and everything you ever said was always taken literally. That's basically what people have been doing to me for the past several months, and honestly, for years. But what Billy and the public doesn't know is that before I launched the Gofundme, and before I released that video, I did send the script to my lawyers to make sure it was all correct and above board. This is the email I sent them on the 27th of October 2022. They replied the next day on the 28th, advising me they had highlighted the words they were concerned with. My lawyers weren't as deluded as me, so as you can see, they had problems with me calling Billy's lawsuits frivolous or saying that he had no case. And they also didn't like me insulting Billy either. But when it came to describing the second lawsuit or my GoFundMe, they had no issues whatsoever, because everything I said was true. And Billy now admits it. He did send me a second complaint, he did say he was going to file it, and I really don't give a fuck what decisions he and his lawyer made after that point, because they never told us. After I released the GoFundMe, Billy's lawyer sent us a letter attaching photos of the GoFundMe and asking why I was crowdfunding upon the basis that Billy had instituted a second defamation claim against me. My lawyers responded to this letter, saying, "With respect, your correspondence clearly misunderstands the basis of our client's recent publication and misstates the words used by him. Our client does not say a second defamation proceeding has been commenced, rather that proceedings were sent to him. This is a factual statement having regard to your correspondence of 10th of May 2022. At no point in time has your client withdrawn the threat of commencing the proceedings foreshadowed in your correspondence of 10th of May 2022. Now consider this. Billy knows I just made a video saying that he said he was going to sue me for a second time, and I was raising money on that basis. My lawyers have even confirmed to his lawyer that what I said was factual and that it was their actions that are causing this. And according to Billy's latest video, by this point in time, Billy had already changed his mind and instructed his lawyer not to proceed. You would think that Billy's lawyer might respond to this letter and to let us know that we were incorrect if he really wasn't going to sue us. But no, Billy's lawyer did not respond at all. You would think if Billy had changed his mind and wasn't really going to sue me again, that he might want to let the public know that this was not true. I mean, according to Billy, I was lying and scamming the public. But no, not a single word. All Billy's lawyer had to do was spend 2 minutes drafting a response saying, "Yes, I know we sent you a second complaint and said we were going to sue you, but my client has now changed his mind." That's all he needed to say. But no, despite this massive fraud that was apparently being perpetrated by me, they couldn't be bothered correcting us or letting anyone from the public know. You see, if Billy's lawyer had responded letting us know that Billy wasn't going to sue us, then I would need to inform the public. If they let me know the second lawsuit was never going to happen and I didn't tell my donors, that might be considered unethical. At least at that point I could have offered refunds. I mean, just the relief of knowing the second lawsuit was no longer coming would have caused me to just cancel the GoFundMe completely. I might have done another GoFundMe at a later stage, but the basis for that crowdfunding would obviously be different. Instead, because Billy couldn't be bothered telling me or anyone else on the planet that he wasn't going to sue me, we had to wait another 6 months until the statute of limitations expired to know that he wasn't going to sue. And of course, by that stage, I had already withdrawn the money from the GoFundMe and started using it to cover legal fees, which is exactly what I said I would use the money for in my video. Maybe if I was the only variable in this whole mess, I could battle my way through it alone, but unfortunately, this affects my entire family too, and psychologically and financially, some help would really benefit not only me, but them as well. So I have set up a GoFundMe to help with my fight against Billy Mitchell, and any help would be immensely appreciated. This GoFundMe is set to cover the rest of my existing lawsuit, plus the new lawsuit that Billy Mitchell says he will be filing, plus having to deal with all of the other bullshit threats that come my way. Billy didn't correct me or advise me he had changed his mind because he wanted me to believe that he was going to sue me. Billy uses the legal system as a weapon. He wanted to inflict as much stress as possible, and unfortunately this strategy works. And then guess what Billy does as soon as the statute of limitations expires? He makes a speech at a convention denying the second complaint ever existed. And his proof the second complaint never existed is that if you search for it in the court filings, you won't find it.
But then you go on there and you say he's suing me again. He puts up nothing, no proof, anything that he's being sued again. Nothing. There is one complaint in there, and that's the original complaint. So when the attorney sends his attorney a letter and says, your client is fraudulently claiming that we filed a second and third lawsuit against him, you know, that is not right. It's called a letter of concern, okay? He starts a GoFundMe because the bad boy is suing him again. He needs money. And you are so silly, you hear what he says, and you donate money without any knowledge or any background. And the GoFundMe is at $150,000. $30,000 for the video. You give him $180,000 based upon a lie.
Obviously, you won't find it in the court filings because Billy never filed it. This was always known, and he claims that I said he filed a second and third lawsuit against him, which of course I never did. In my video, I said that Billy said he was planning to file it against me. This GoFundMe is set to cover the rest of my existing lawsuit, plus the new lawsuit that Billy Mitchell says he will be filing. Shortly after I created the GoFundMe, Charlie made a video talking about Billy's new threats, and he described the situation perfectly.
This is one of the most baffling reasons for a lawsuit I think I've probably ever heard in general. Now, as I understand it, the second lawsuit hasn't been fully filed yet. Right now it is still in the letter of intent stage, where they are intending to sue Carl and have sent him the documents to indicate such. But it looks like it is going to be sent in the coming days. In response to this, Carl made another video going over just how silly it all is, but also how expensive everything is, and he set up a GoFundMe because he's right now getting dual hand jobs here from Billy Mitchell with the double lawsuit coming in. So he does have a GoFundMe, which I'm going to link below. Please feel free to support him if you'd like to help Carl against an absolutely ruthless villain here.
He clearly says the second lawsuit isn't filed yet, just that they are intending to, and he promotes my GoFundMe on that basis. This video received almost 7 million views, and there was never an issue. From my perspective, I thought everything was quite clear. I sent the script to my lawyers, made sure everything was fine, they said it was fine. We responded to Billy's lawyer immediately explaining why the GoFundMe was made, after which they never responded or informed us the information was incorrect. Billy never made a public statement saying that what I was saying was wrong, and when Charlie made his video, which received 7 times more views than my video, he explained what was happening exactly as it was, and there was no uproar or backlash or any issue with money being raised on that basis. This only seems to be a problem now, 3 years later, after I lost the lawsuit and there is a giant smear campaign going on against me.
Here's the problem. Mr. Jobs testified under oath at trial, quote, "I don't believe anything Billy Mitchell says," end of quote. So apparently the only time Mr. Jobs ever believes me is after 6 months pass without follow-up, and he stands to gain $200,000 from his audience.
Yes, I don't believe anything Billy says, and neither should you. Sending me a physical complaint is not saying something, it's doing something. I could hold the document in my hands and read it. I knew that it existed. When Billy's lawyer tells my lawyers that he had instructions to file the complaint, that is not Billy saying something. That is a lawyer telling another lawyer that they have instructions to do something. I believe that Billy's lawyer was not lying here. In fact, I don't even understand the point Billy is trying to make here. I mean, this is a big deal. My law firm received a complaint and were told it was going to be filed. They took it extremely seriously, as did I. This isn't a game. And Billy's response to me and my team taking his lawyer at his word is, "Yeah, but you said you don't believe anything I say." It's the type of argument a literal child would make. That is the incredible level of intellectual honesty we are dealing with when it comes to Billy.
So apparently the only time Mr. Jobs ever believes me is after 6 months pass without follow-up, and he stands to gain $200,000 from his audience.
What does Billy mean when he says I gained $200,000? Is he trying to imply that I took the money and went down to my local Gucci store or something? There is a reason Billy spent $686,000 in legal fees. It's because I also spent $686,000 in legal fees. I took all of that money and I used it to put up a damn good fight. To be completely transparent, the total amount of funds that Notch provided me was $300,000. And what I am deeply appreciative of, and will never ever forget, is that even after I lost, Notch was still very supportive. I mean, after Billy, Notch spent the most money out of anyone. It is because of Notch and because of the Gofundme donors that I was able to stand up to Billy like I did. I didn't do things cheaply. I did as much as I could. I spent $150,000 of my own money as well, on top of the money I received. This was not a profit-making exercise, but I can assure you that money didn't go to waste. If you are unhappy you donated to the GoFundMe because I lost, or because you feel as though that money ultimately ended up in Billy's hands because he won, then understand that that is completely untrue. It is because of the people that donated to my GoFundMe and supported my defense that Billy lost $500,000 despite winning. Without the support I received, I wouldn't have been able to defend myself, and Billy would have just steamrolled right over me, hardly spending anything on legal fees himself, and then he would have just moved on to the next person because he would have learned nothing. Because of the public support I received, despite winning, Billy still got destroyed, and I would be very surprised if Billy ever sued anyone ever again.
Based upon Mr. Jobs' I lost video, it appears that he plans to dispute the factual findings of the judgment.
I was considering doing a full video covering all of the lies Billy said in court, but since then I had changed my mind.
Remember that despite all these allegations that he hurls with inflammatory languages, it is ultimately him who the court found to not be a credible witness. Let's review an example of this in his I lost video. He says this.
I will say one thing though. The judge found Billy Mitchell to be a credible witness, and essentially accepted his full oral testimony as fact, despite our many attempts to show that Billy is a liar. For example, we have Billy on video in 2023 during his Twin Galaxies deposition saying that the effect I've had on him is minimal.
Did the actions that Carl Jobson, David Race, and Jeremy Young and Jeff Harris take also cause you emotional distress?
That is minimal compared to this.
At that moment in my deposition, I was discussing the allegations related to video games, not Apollo Legend.
This is entirely false. You see, in my video, I shortened the clip for brevity's sake, but let's listen to what was said immediately beforehand.
Are there any alternative stressors that you've had in your life that are affecting you now?
Just this, and what is a result of this?
Oh, and the other lawsuits, so right?
Oh, you mean like things that resulted from this, like Carl Jobs and David Race? Yes, very much.
They're also causing you emotional distress?
Well, they're not making me happy.
No, I'm asking you though, did the actions that Carl Jobson, David Race, and Jeremy Young and Jeff Harris' take also cause you emotional distress?
That is minimal compared to this,
Why?
because this is where it all began.
As you can see, they were discussing lawsuits, not video games, lawsuits. Billy likes to lie and say whatever will help him in any particular context, even if it will hurt him in a different context. In his deposition, the lawyer asked, "Is there any other stresses that are affecting you now?" Billy says no, because in the Twin Galaxies lawsuit, he wants to make it seem like Twin Galaxies was doing all of the damage.
Are there any alternative stressors that you've had in your life that are affecting you now?
Just this, and what is a result of this?
But then the lawyer reminds him of the other lawsuits, and explicitly says lawsuits, to which Billy replies Carl Jobst and David Race.
Just this, and what is a result of this?
Oh, and the other lawsuits, though, right?
Oh, you mean like things that resulted from this, like Carl Jobst and David Race?
Now, both of these lawsuits have nothing to do with video games, as admitted by Billy Mitchell himself. And Billy even shows a clip of himself saying, "My lawsuit has nothing to do with video games."
What about Carl Jobst? Why are you suing him?
Carl Jobst has nothing to do with video games. He's being sued because he's blaming the death of an individual, Apollo Legend, on me.
And you're suing him for defamation for making that blame?
Has nothing to do with video games.
And the same applies to David Race.
Why are you suing Mr. Race?
I'm suing him because he illegally recorded 27 phone calls between he and I.
The line of questioning was never about video game scores, it was about lawsuits, but Billy lies about what the line of questioning was about because he doesn't show the full context.
Despite hearing my explanation, my deposition testimony at the trial, and despite reading the judgment's reasoning for accepting my testimony on this issue, he just omits everything and presents his position as fact.
It would take about 10 hours to cover all of the lies Billy spouted during our trial. I might do a full video in the future, but I'm really not sure how many people want to hear my side of the story at this point, so I don't know if I ever will. But let me give you a few quick examples, seeing as though Billy decided to bring it up. Let's talk about appearances. In my trial, Billy claimed that the Twin Galaxies announcement, the one he sued them for over $1 million, made him lose one appearance.
Now, after Twin Galaxies made that announcement, was there any impact on the number of appearances you were receiving or invitations to do appearances?
The announcement hurt me for a short time. There was, off the top of my head, I can think of one place that called and canceled. Mm-hmm. There were a couple that just stopped communicating. But as far as the number of appearances that I got, no.
A single appearance. And in that lawsuit, he claimed he lost all of these appearances. He even specifically claimed in my trial that the Midwest Gaming Expo and the Southern Fried Gaming Expo kept their agreements they had in place.
Some places, immediately after that Midwest Classic Gaming Expo and the Southern Fried Gaming Expo, they kept their agreements that they had in place with me.
But in the lawsuit against Twin Galaxies, he specifically claimed that he lost those appearances. The point is that he was trying to downplay the damage that Twin Galaxies did in order to claim that his reputation was fantastic at the time that I made my video, and it was entirely my fault that he could no longer get appearances. In my trial, he said that up until my video, he was doing 15 to 20 appearances per year, but after my video, he was only able to do one.
And so after the Guinness publication, do you recall how many events you would be doing each year at that time?
Yes, during that time, like I said before, if I did 20 events, 15 were paid events. So, 15 to 20.
Mm-hmm. And that was at the end of, so the end of, say, from 2020 through to mid-2021. Is that the period you're talking about?
Correct.
So clear, when you were talking 15 and 20 there, When are you talking that was occurring?
That was occurring up until, May of 2021.
Right, and so come back, after May 2021, how many paid appearances have you made at these conventions or expos?
Like I said, I think I've had the opportunity at less than a half a dozen. I think, am I really going to say one? I mean, I got one that comes to mind. It was a paid appearance.
But the reality is that Billy made 0 appearances in the 12 months before my video. His last appearance before my video was January 2020, and he had not done a single appearance since then. His first appearance since January 2020 was an appearance at the Music City Multicon in October 2021. Listen to this news report from that same event.
Man dubbed the video game player of the century was in Lebanon this weekend. At Music City Multicon, Billy Mitchell set out to beat every level of Pac-Man and also walk away with a perfect score. News Channel 5's Hannah McDonald was there for Mitchell's first appearance since the pandemic started.
It literally says his first appearance since the pandemic began, which of course is true. And Billy provided no actual evidence that he was doing 15 to 20 appearances per year in my trial. He just said it. And despite no physical evidence, the judge fully believed him and fully accepted his oral testimony as truth, even though it was a complete lie. And what's saddening to me is that I told my barrister to show this news clip which proves Billy was lying, but he refused to do so. Another example, and of course this isn't an exhaustive list, is John Weeks. Billy showed this email in court, which is apparently from John Weeks apologizing for not being able to host Billy at his pinball auction due to my video. And he testified that he lost this gig because of me.
Did you receive any contact from people that had already engaged you to appear at events or conferences or expos?
Mr. John Weeks.
Now, who's Mr. Weeks?
John Weeks is the owner of the Museum of Pinball in Southern California, city of Banning. He had the world's largest collection of pinball machines, and he had arcade games, and he had, for a considerable time, planned on liquidating. And he said he wanted me to host the auction for all of that. It was over 1,700 machines, and it was valued at $7 million. And we wrestled back and forth, and we agreed on $50,000.
Okay, so that was an agreement you had in place when these videos by
Yes.
Mr. Jobs were published in May and June of 2021?
Correct.
Okay, and did Mr. Weeks contact you after?
He contacted me in July.
Right, and what did he say to you in July?
In July, he told me that as a business decision, he felt he needed to cancel our agreement. And he specifically mentioned, or the specific reason was because of the negativity surrounding me because of the Carl Jobs allegations. I think that's an exact quote to what he said.
Did Mr. Weeks write to you subsequently at all?
Afterwards, I mean, I pleaded with him otherwise. You know, I tried to do what I could do. And I tried to call him back again. But eventually he sent me an email.
However, in the Twin Galaxies deposition, he said that John Weeks cancelled because of Twin Galaxies.
Who else told you that they're canceling your appearance because of the accusations against you?
John Weeks in California.
John Weeks?
Yeah.
Where? What's that for?
Museum of Pinball.
And apparently the fee was going to be $50,000, which is ridiculous and not indicative of what Billy normally receives, as per his Twin Galaxies filings. But it gets even more stupid, because Billy did attend the auction. There is even a news article that shows he was there. Here is a nice picture of Billy promoting it, saying, "Influential video game legend Billy Mitchell was on hand during the auction at the Museum of Pinball in Banning, September 24, 2021. The email is dated 28th of September 2021. So apparently, even though Billy was at the event and was helping to promote it publicly alongside John Weeks, Mr. Weeks felt the need to email Billy 4 days later, apologizing for not being able to host him at the event. And of course, the judge accepted that this email was sufficient evidence to confirm that my video had damaged Billy's reputation. Even though it's obviously a fake email because Billy was literally photographed at the event helping to host it. I told my barrister to press Billy on this and show him the article, and he again refused. There was tons of evidence I told them to present, which they didn't. There were tons of questions I told them to ask, which they didn't. They did things the way they wanted to do it, and my opinion wasn't very relevant. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if this was because of rules of evidence or some legitimate reason, but the fact remains, there were tons of questions and evidence that I wanted to present that I had no control over and were never shown. In his deposition, Billy also confirmed that his business was doing much better since 2020.
Well, your business is doing great now, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Are there still lingering effects from the defamatory statements?
There is. It's doing much better since 2020, but it's not better.
How old are your kids?
In his trial against me, he said my video completely ruined his business, but my video was in 2021, so how is this even logically possible? In his 2023 deposition for Twin Galaxies, Billy said there was still lingering effects from the defamation they caused.
Are there still lingering effects from the defamatory statements?
There is.
In his trial against me, he said everything was cleared up by 2021 before my video.
And by 2021, there was no effect anywhere for me from Twin Galaxies. None. Everything had been corrected in my mind.
Are there still lingering effects from the defamatory statements?
There is.
In his Twin Galaxies deposition, Billy said that his stress was primarily caused by Twin Galaxies.
There's a tremendous amount of emotional distress. Okay? But it started, begins, ends, and is primarily Twin Galaxies.
In fact, in his Twin Galaxies court documents, he even attributed an atrial fibrillation and hernia because of the stress caused by Twin Galaxies. But in my trial, he said his stress and atrial fibrillation was caused by me.
You attributed the atrial fibrillation on the stress caused by Twin Galaxies litigation.
Okay, it's caused by stress.
I'm asking you whether you attributed that stress.
I don't know. I don't think the Twin Galaxies stress is nothing compared to this.
Sorry, the Twin Galaxies stress, I want to get this right, the Twin Galaxies stress
Does not compare to this.
No, you said is nothing compared to this.
It doesn't compare to this.
Okay.
Atrial fibrillation is caused by stress. Okay, was there some stress there? Yes. Was there far more here? Yes. When did I actually have to have the surgery? In late 2021. There's a tremendous amount of emotional distress. Okay, but it started, begins, ends, and is primarily Twin Galaxies.
As I said before, I could go on for hours and hours about the lies that Billy spewed on the stand, which the judge just lapped up like a thirsty dog. But I will leave it up to Billy here. If he wants me to do a full breakdown of all of the perjury he committed on the stand, he can keep on lying and making videos about it, and I will. If he wants to let it go, so will I. I am very happy to move on, make unrelated content, and we can both cut our losses. And just so no one takes me the wrong way, just because Billy lied a lot, which he always does, and this will never change, that doesn't mean that I was in the right either. I can say something that is defamatory, and Billy can be a lying con artist. Both can be true at the same time, and in this instance, both were true at the same time. Billy continues to spout nonsense in his video.
When I settled my lawsuit with Twin Galaxies in January 2024, Twin Galaxies and Mr. Jobs jointly circulated a claim that I remained banned from Twin Galaxies competition. That is a lie. Here is the relevant clause to the settlement agreement with Twin Galaxies. Twin Galaxies will work to include any future score submissions by Mitchell to Twin Galaxies leaderboard, with such submissions having to go through the normal Twin Galaxies adjudication process. So what Twin Galaxies and Mr. Jobs claimed was that even though Twin Galaxies said it would permit future score submissions from me, I remain banned from the Twin Galaxies competition. That just doesn't make any sense.
What does he mean by jointly? I emailed the owner of Twin Galaxies, Jace Hall, asking if Billy was banned. He said yes. Jace even made a public comment himself saying that Billy was still banned. I don't know what is inside the settlement agreement, but I'm going to believe the owner of Twin Galaxies when he says Billy is banned, not Billy Mitchell, who has already proven in this video that he will put a random document on screen and lie about what it's about. This out of context screenshot could be anything, but even on its face it makes no sense. If Billy isn't banned, why would Twin Galaxies need to work to include anything? If you aren't banned on Twin Galaxies, you can simply make an account and submit a score. Twin Galaxies doesn't need to do anything. If anything, this implies he is still banned in some way, and it's because he is banned that Twin Galaxies would need to do some work in order to get his score submitted.
Carl makes a claim that I'm a proven cheater, and that I've seen commentary from around the internet for years now where people claim that there's no doubt. It's obvious. It's been proved. Well, I ask you to consider this. Twin Galaxies had the opportunity to prove in court that I cheated. It couldn't. Carl Jobs, who was told by a billionaire, Notch, that he'd pay for the best legal representation possible, did not even try to prove that I cheated. If it's obvious, that's certain, so easily provable, why does the claim suddenly fall apart as soon as it's taken out of the court of public opinion and into the actual court of law, where I have the right to reply and where real evidence is given by real people who swear under oath to tell the truth?
Twin Galaxies settled with Billy Mitchell because I assume Jace Hall isn't a moron who wanted to lose a ton of money running a trial where even if he won, there was no benefit. Twin Galaxies was the defendant. They never wanted the lawsuit to begin with. It was Billy pushing everything forward. Remember, Billy won against me and still lost $500,000. Going to trial will almost always result in both parties losing a ton of money. And besides, Billy claimed that my lawsuit had nothing to do with video games.
Carl Jobs has nothing to do with video games. He's being sued because he's blaming the death of an individual, Apollo legend, on me.
So for him to now assert that I had the opportunity to prove that he cheated in court is extremely stupid. The defendant can only argue the case that is presented against them. I can't just randomly insert whatever topic I want to argue in court. We talked about cheating in my lawsuit in regards to Billy's reputation, not the cheating itself. We had to show that his reputation was bad because he cheated. We didn't have to prove that he actually cheated. So what he is asserting here makes absolutely no sense.
And regardless, Twin Galaxies, what kind of defendant spends hundreds of thousands of dollars, even over $1 million according to his lawyer, litigating a case for 4 years to settle 3 months before trial? A defendant that expects to lose.
What kind of plaintiff spends 3 years and $500,000 suing someone over a statement that was immediately removed and retracted?
On May 5th, 2025, at 3:02 a.m., Mr. Jobs wrote on Discord, "There are 2 videos that need to be made. One talking about the hot sauce company, one talking about how Billy needs to stand on things to make himself look taller in photos. Carl, I'm 6'6". I don't need to do anything to look taller. I've taken thousands of photos of different types with fans since 1982. Some very serious, some nothing but fun. Meanwhile, you're 5'7". Cope harder. Try not to stretch the truth."
I must admit that Billy has me by the balls here. This one I got wrong. Ironically again, this Discord message was just a joke. I wasn't really going to make a video about how Billy stands on things to make himself look taller, but after Billy brought it up, I realized that if people did take my comment seriously, and people came away thinking that Billy stands on things to make himself look taller, then that would certainly be defamation. This is one of the worst things you could ever say about another man. And because I don't want to defame Billy anymore, I need to set the record straight. Billy does not stand on things to make himself look taller. For the record, I never said Billy was short. In fact, he's obviously very tall, and therefore he would not need to stand on anything to look taller. You can see from this picture, he is a few inches taller than his peers. So the notion that he would do this is really silly, and I am sorry that I spread false information. But there has been some fake news being spread online about Billy in this regard, which I feel like I need to address and clear up. Take for example this picture. It looks like Billy is standing on a paint can to look taller. While everyone else is happy to just stand on the ground like normal people, Billy felt the need to stand on a can of paint. But this photo has clearly been photoshopped. Here is the real photo. And as you can see, Billy doesn't need to stand on the paint can because he's already so tall. So while he does stand on the paint can, it's not because he needs to, as Billy is already a very tall man. Billy is way taller than me. Let me make that very clear. Billy is taller, and that makes him better. There is also a very misleading video going around that people are claiming shows Billy standing on a roll of duct tape to make himself look taller, and I need to dispel this awful rumor as well. During this group photo, there is a roll of duct tape that Billy locks eyes onto, and he decides to grab it. Now, Billy is a very tall man, so he doesn't need to stand on anything to look taller. It appears as though dropping the roll of duct tape made a loud noise and startled Billy, causing him to look away and act as if it wasn't him. But it's not because what he is doing is weird. Standing on a roll of duct tape in a group photo is very common in some cultures. As you can still see, Billy is a very tall man. In fact, it looks like he's the tallest person there. Everyone else on the stage, despite being shorter than Billy, is just happy to stand on the stage normally. So of course Billy wouldn't need to stand on anything because he is already so tall. Now that we are almost ready to take the photo, Billy makes sure the roll of tape is in the correct position and stands on it to take the photo. But this is not because he needs to look taller. It's actually because earlier on, Billy noticed that the structural integrity of the floor was compromised, and the duct tape ensured his weight was distributed evenly. Billy does not stand on things to make himself look taller. In this group photo, while everyone else is happy to stand on the stage normally, and even though Billy is the tallest person there, Billy stands on a toolbox so that he's a foot taller than everyone else. But this is not to look taller. I repeat, Billy, despite being much taller than the person in front of him, did not stand on a toolbox to make himself look taller. Honestly, Billy understates how tall he really is, because he is actually over 7 feet tall. Sometimes he's even 8 feet tall. But it's not because he stands on things to make himself look taller. Billy does not stand on things to make himself appear taller, even when standing next to short people either. Clearly there was no space here to do a proper group photo, so Billy was forced to stand on the curb. Billy Mitchell is a very tall man, and being tall makes you a better person. So Billy wouldn't need to stand on a paint can, or a roll of tape, or a toolbox to make himself taller. I sincerely apologize for spreading these disgusting false rumors.
But he's got this video, and I know it's almost 3 hours of a live stream. I'm not going to watch the whole thing, but the thumbnail caught my eye because it says, well, the title of it says, Carl Jobs threatens to report my channel to YouTube and YouTube partner. And in his Discord, and people, shout out to you guys last night telling me about this because I didn't know about it. Carl Jobs said, I will report him to YouTube. I will speak with my YouTube partner. And I'm like, bro, how many L's do you need to take? Like, yikes. You're not winning the community back if your response to losing a lawsuit and declaring bankruptcy is, now I'm going to start trying to report and take channels down that talk about me.
He honestly looks like a supervillain.
Right?
Wow, this seems really bad. I am going after small creators and trying to take their channels down, just for talking about me. I really must be evil. According to Reddit, I was threatening to report someone just for making videos about me, the same way that I do to other people. This is horrible. I have truly become the villain. Their evidence is a Discord message where I said I would report someone. This evidence is really damning. I mean, it doesn't explain why I was reporting someone or the details, but surely what people are saying is true. Surely I was just after blood. I wanted to report smaller channels because they talked about me, and I don't like that. This has to be true because someone said it was. But let's take a look at what really happened. My Discord message was in relation to the channel LUS. From the time of the verdict to when I posted this message, LUS had uploaded 52 videos about me. That is more than one video every single day. And it's true that all of his videos are critical of me. However, this isn't why I said I would report his channel. You can upload as many videos about me as you want. I don't really care. All of those 52 videos are full of lies. He just makes things up and spouts them as fact. For example, remember how I checked with my lawyers before posting my Gofundme to make sure I was describing things correctly? Well, here is LUS spreading the lie that I never checked with my lawyers.
So if Carl had any question about this and how he should phrase the terminology, he can go straight to his very expensive lawyers that Notch was paying, or some confusion about what was happening, and ask, hey, I'm confused. How many times have we actually been sued, and is there a docket number? The court, he's smart enough and he has the resources to understand that he was only really sued once, and the argument he's trying to make about lying and so on. So here, I think it is, Carl has only been about money. Carl will tell you this. You don't need to look at this. Carl has many, many quotes about me being about money, 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 money.
Remember how I made a settlement offer to Billy early in the lawsuit? And in fact, I was the only person to try and settle. Here is LUS spreading the lie that I never tried to settle.
This has been my clear belief all along, and Billy Mitchell's response video alludes to it as well. Billy Mitchell has settled. Settlement is not a loss. Settlement is a win for both parties. Both parties should be encouraged to settle. Let me put it this way. Your lawyer should encourage you to settle. The opposing counsel's lawyer should be telling their clients to settle. The judge tells them to settle. There are mediation that has to be done. That means the court system makes you try to settle. I do not know why Carl Jobs did not settle on this case.
Remember how I told Billy before going bankrupt that I would be going bankrupt, and I made an offer that would give him twice as much money as he otherwise would have gotten? An offer Billy declined? Here is LUS spreading the lie that I never attempted to make such an offer.
At the end of the day, in many of these situations, the difference between Billy Mitchell and Carl Jobs is that there's such animosity coming from Carl Jobs. There's such hatred coming from him. He just can never come to settlement. But in many of these other cases, it's a car dealership. They have probably at any given times 30, 40, 50 outstanding loans on leases that they are not collecting. And so it's not personal. It's just business. And that's the way it should be. Can we conclude a amount of money that is more than you would like to pay, Carl, but less than I would receive, less than I should have received otherwise? So both parties have to endure some pain. Carl does not want to take responsibility, and he does not want to endure any pain. So he thinks bankruptcy is the best option for him, which I will tell you it is not. At least in the US, it is not.
At the very beginning of the lawsuit, Notch was paying my lawyers directly, and this was being handled by Notch's assistant. After several months, his assistant indicated that she wanted to stop supporting, at which time I messaged Notch through Twitter, which was how I connected with him in the first place. I wanted to let him know what happened and to confirm if he really did want to stop paying. though ultimately he didn't read my message and it's been sitting on sent ever since. This meant that I had to find money elsewhere. Here is LUS spreading the lie that I never contacted Notch after he stopped supporting me, and that the GoFundMe shouldn't have been made because I should have just reached out to Notch.
Now, the GoFundMe thing is pretty bizarre because Notch paid 3 months, right? And his manager, so Notch says, hey, manager, I want you to pay for this guy's case. His manager pulls the plug, and according to Carl, he doesn't, Notch does not know the manager has pulled the plug, but Carl in 1 year is stressed out. He's going to do GoFundMes, right, for $200,000. He never actually recontacts Notch. Well, the first thing I would do is contact Notch and say, hey, man, I really appreciate all the help, and I don't know why you can't help me anymore, but I appreciate the help that you've already given me. Do you have any spare time to talk? And then we get the Camelot interview where he announces that Notch is back in, and he didn't even know that Carl's legal bills were not being paid. So Carl at this time had raised an additional $200,000 from his own fans that I don't think had to be raised. I think you just raise your hand and say, hey, Notch, thanks for all the help. Please contact me if you ever feel like helping me again.
I could go on, but you get the idea. He just makes things up out of thin air and claims them as fact. And they are always conveniently designed to paint the worst possible picture of me. Even still, this is not the reason I said I would report his channel. There are tons of creators making videos that are full of lies about me, and I haven't said a word about them or done anything. This is part of being a successful YouTuber, especially one that just lost a lawsuit. You can lie about me all you want, and the worst thing that will happen is that I will make a video response. But then LUS wasn't satisfied just going after me. He started defaming my wife, calling her a criminal, saying that she will go to jail, inciting his viewers to attack her and report her to the government.
If this is real, if he was sued, he lost, then he had his wife buy his equity in the home so he doesn't pay Billy Mitchell, and he's admitting so on Discord. We are crossing the line of criminal right now. Wang, who's Carl's wife, which I proved to you, born in China. I have all the information, right? I'm not going to reveal it. Your wife be going to jail too. Your wife is going to jail too. We need to send these to the bankruptcy court. We need to send this video to the bankruptcy court. I need to get in touch with the bankruptcy court.
This is an innocent person, mind you, who has done absolutely nothing wrong. This is why I said I would report him, after he started going after an innocent person simply because she is my wife. And because of LUS encouraging his audience to falsely report her, people did try to stop her from buying the house. They tried to stop an innocent mother from keeping the family home for herself and her son. At the time, the trustee and my wife were in negotiations for her to purchase the property. And because of LUS and his audience who reported her, negotiations were delayed as the trustee needed to investigate the reports. Thankfully, LUS only managed to delay things for a day or two. The trustee looked into the reports, they read my Discord conversation, realized that all I was doing was accurately describing what would happen, and then they accepted the offer. But for a day or two, my wife was extremely stressed and upset. So congratulations, LUS, you made an innocent woman cry. I guess that means you've achieved something. This is why I said I would report his channel. And isn't it rich how LUS and his audience reporting me and my wife is seen as a good thing, but me reporting LUS is considered evil? They actively tried to prevent my wife and son from keeping their home. Their goal was to make them lose everything. And this is seen as noble. Their hate for me has clouded their moral judgment so much that disgusting acts like this are applauded. And any attempt from me to protect myself or my family makes me a villain. But you know what's beautiful about this situation? Just 13 minutes after saying I would report him, I took it back and said I wouldn't take any action. And just an hour later, I clarified again that I wasn't going to report his channel. For a grand total of 13 minutes, my threat of reporting him was legitimate. And honestly, I still think I have a pretty good reason to report his channel. But I didn't, and I won't, and I explained why. But I suppose the reality that I considered reporting LUS for 13 minutes, and then said that I wouldn't, after he posted daily videos about me for a month and a half full of defamatory lies, culminating in him falsely calling my wife and I criminals, and inciting his audience to falsely report us to the government in an attempt to stop my wife and son from keeping their home, isn't as fun or entertaining as Carl is taking down small YouTube channels because they talked about him. So that's the narrative these people run with. It's pretty telling how a simple comment like, "my wife will buy me out," can result in such vitriolic and immoral behavior. This is why it has been very difficult for me to separate legitimate criticism from bad faith actors. My wife buying my house was not only standard procedure and illegal, but it was a positive thing for her and our son. Did LUS want my son to be homeless? Or did he just not consider the ramifications of his actions? When trying to defend himself, LUS claimed that all he was doing was repeating what I said.
I mean, this is Carl's own fucking words, my dudes. Carl, if I read back your words to you and you are offended, do not say your words then. If what I'm reading back to you is so offensive, you have to shut down this channel. Right? What is wrong with you?
This is fascinating, because I don't remember saying that what I was doing was illegal. I don't recall calling myself a criminal, and I certainly don't recall reporting myself to the government. Nothing I ever said indicated that what I was doing was nefarious. This was entirely you, and yet you don't even see it. Or is it just that you're feigning ignorance? Even things that happened well before I was sued are treated as some kind of evil plot. For example, my wife is an extremely intelligent and educated woman with a degree in accounting. She is the person who created our company, and she does all of the bookkeeping and taxes. She essentially runs the business. She takes care of everything that isn't directly related to making content. That's why she is a director and the secretary of the company. But listen to how LUS describes it.
Carl thought he was being really smart, right? When he made his wife the director and the secretary. Okay? Carl thought he was being really smart, right? So let me show you this. Let me show you something. You have two jobs open. One of them is director and one of them is secretary for the Carl Jobs Gaming Company. So Carl thought he was really smart and he didn't put his name here.
According to LUS, my wife is just a dumb, bimbo slave without agency that I forced into those roles as a placeholder for some unexplained criminal reason. Mind you, the company was created well before I was even sued and had nothing to do with it. Not only is what LUS said disgustingly insulting to my wife, but it just makes no sense on any logical level. And for the record, I was a director too. However, you aren't allowed to be a director when you're bankrupt. This is a legal restriction. So on the same day that I went bankrupt, I had to resign as a director. This is even outlined in the trustee's report. However, because LUS is so ignorant about everything and fills in every single gap in his knowledge with "Carl is evil," he claims that my wife being the sole director is just another scheme to avoid consequences. Given how LUS has falsely accused my wife of being a criminal and has labeled her as just a dumb slave, I'm curious to see if he has the balls and integrity to make an official retraction. Or perhaps he's just another fucking hypocrite.
The director is Wong. That is his wife. Again, I'm not going to touch his wife. I'm not going to talk about his wife in this because it would be unfair to Carl's wife. Not because it would be unfair to Carl, but because it would be unfair to his wife. Okay? I do know the wife's background. She has a LinkedIn. Wong, who's Carl's wife, which I proved to you, born in China. I have all the information, right? I'm not going to reveal it. I'm not going to disclose very much about Carl's wife because I want to keep Carl's wife out of this. Carl Jobs is married to his wife, blank blank Wong. They are joint tenants And again, this is the Wong, right? This is the right Wong. This is his wife, who didn't take his last name, right? But whatever, right? She does have an American name. So she does have a official American name, which I didn't present to you. Forget Carl's. Hypothetically, if you involve your wife into moving assets, buying assets, whatever it is, and it turns out to be illegal, your wife be going to jail too. Your wife is going to jail too. But here's what I'm saying, man. Why the fuck you bring your wife into this? I would never bring my significant other into this. Yeah, Carl's wife is still a Wong. W-O-N-G. So Carl's wife is not a Job Sit. Yeah, she kept her Chinese last name. She has an American name. So she has actually an American name, which I'm not going to tell you guys. And anyone who says it, I'm just going to delete them, right? I'm just going to, even if you're a big fan of mine, because it's not right to involve your family. But she has changed her name. Carl's wife did change her name from a Chinese first name to an American first name, but she didn't change her last name. So that's interesting. Let's see who the office holders are. It's Wong. Again, this is Carl's wife. She was born in China. For some reason, I thought she was not Chinese, but from one Chinese person to another Chinese person, if you want someone to talk to, reach out to me, Wong, and we can talk. Right?
My wife is not going to reach out to you, bro. She thinks you are a disgusting creep. This has been a very long video, but to quickly summarize, I was an idiot during the lawsuit. Despite winning, Billy lost $500,000. The money earned from this channel does not go to Billy. The GoFundMe was not a scam, and Billy is still a lying con man. Thank you to everyone who has continued to enjoy my videos. There is a ton of fun content on the way. Thank you to everyone who sent messages of support. Even if I haven't replied, I have still read and appreciate them all. Thank you for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.